Well, hello. It's great to see you again, and thank you for listening in to this talk. I thought today I'd talk about Nicodemus, who's a fascinating character. He's unique in the Gospels. He's not included amongst the named 12 disciples of Jesus, but he does seem to be a disciple, although that's not where he starts. He's unusual because he's a Pharisee, and normally in the Gospels, the Pharisees are very critical of Jesus, very hostile to him, and some of his major opponents. And Jesus, one has to say, in some of the Gospels is quite rude about them too. So it's a mutually uncomfortable relationship. And also Nicodemus is unusual because we hear about him and his faith journey over a considerable period of time. Most characters in the gospel we hear once. It's as if the spotlight is switched on them for a particular moment, and then the light is switched off and we hear nothing else about them. So Zacchaeus, for example, he's up the tree when Jesus comes to visit Jericho, and he comes down the tree, and Jesus invites him himself to Zacchaeus' house for tea, and we think Zacchaeus' life is transformed, but we hear nothing about what happens afterwards. Does he become a follower? Does he leave home and follow after Jesus with the other disciples? We have no idea. But with Nicodemus, we do have an idea, but because he's mentioned in John's Gospel 3 times. So the first time is when Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night. And the assumption is he's doing that because he doesn't want other people to know, particularly perhaps the other Pharisees, to know that he is at all interested in what Jesus is teaching and saying. And so he comes at night to where Jesus is staying, where Jesus is living, and comes full of questions. And Jesus answers those questions, perhaps, though John's Gospel being John's Gospel, it's very much more Jesus speaking, and Nicodemus only has a couple of very short lines, even in that encounter, but he's obviously searching and wrestling with questions. And then it does go quiet until the end of chapter 7, when the Jewish council, of which Nicodemus is obviously one of the members, is discussing, as it were, the Jesus problem, what to do with this man who's creating a stir, potentially upsetting the Romans, what to do with him. He's a disturber of the peace. And Nicodemus stands up for Jesus in that council meeting to the extent that he says we shouldn't condemn anyone, without giving them a fair trial, a fair hearing. And the other members of the council criticize him and say, oh, are you a Galilean too? Are you going off after him? And we don't know what Nicodemus' response is. And the third and final time that we hear about Nicodemus is on Good Friday, when after Jesus has died, he, along with Joseph of Arimathea, go to the Roman authorities and ask for the body of Jesus, that they might care for it and bury it. And that is an amazing thing to do. It's amazingly brave, courageous. All of the other male disciples definitely have fled. They weren't even there at the crucifixion. Some of the women were. Mary, his mother, was certainly there. Some of the other Marys were there. But even now the crucifixion it is over. They have gone home in the midst of all their pain and their grief. But Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea courageously go to the Roman authorities because they're potentially putting themselves in great danger. If their leader, their master, has just been executed, then they are suspect people. As far as the Romans are concerned, that they could go the same way as Jesus, or certainly be locked up as more troublemakers. So they're really putting themselves at risk. And they're obviously doing it because of the faith and respect and probably love they have for Jesus. And it's fascinating to see this journey that Nicodemus has obviously been on from that first encounter in chapter 3, where he comes suspicious, perhaps uncertain, full of questions, to sort of standing up for Jesus at the council meeting, and then on Good Friday at this moment of great crisis and danger, he's standing up for Jesus, and he doesn't mind who knows that he's a follower of Jesus. An amazing journey. Like I say, unique in the Gospels to see how someone travels, apart from the 12 disciples, you know, to see how someone develops and grows in their understanding of faith and of Jesus and what God is trying to do and offer through him. And I think Nicodemus is a great example of how having questions and uncertainty and doubt is nothing to be feared, it's actually to be celebrated. Because it was as Nicodemus worked through and asked his questions, expressed his uncertainties and his doubts, that ultimately he gets to the place that he does. And I think that makes Nicodemus, if you like, the patron saint of those of us for whom faith is not straightforward. It's not always full of certainty. Maybe there's hardly any certainty for some of us in this whole faith adventure. But he's an example about carry on asking those questions, carry on with the wrestling, with the struggling, because ultimately there is the hope and the experience and the joy of a full of faith. It's also, I think, a lovely example of the patience of God, that God never gives up on Nicodemus. He gives him as much time as he needs to work through all his questions and his uncertainties, and he gently bears with Nicodemus. And I think that's another wonderful aspect of this story of Nicodemus, that God is patient and loves us so much that he just waits for us to journey, sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, to journey towards faith or with our faith. And that's a great thing to remember about God. It's been good sharing this time with you, and I look forward to the next time when we can do that. But goodbye for now.